Hey, boys and girls, we're going to be reading the book Windcatcher, and it's written by the author Avi. And we have some more books written by this author in our library. There's an up-close look of the cover. Windcatcher. And the book actually starts with a backstory from the year 1777. So it's 2021 right now. And this takes you all the way back to 1777. All hands, came the frightened cry, all hands. His Majesty's sailing ship Swallow heeled sharply. In Quartermaster Little John's cabin, the oil lamp swung wildly, sending shadows leaping about as if in search of safety. An iron chest broke from its bonds, slid across the floor, and smashed into a table, shattering it. Bits of crockery and glass whirled through the air. Little John, asleep in his bunk, bolted up. A shrieking wind filled his ears. He found it difficult to breathe. He had to grab hold of the bedpost to keep himself from being thrown. All hands, all hands. Little John, thinking the Swallow was under rebel attack, looked wildly about for the chest. The chest, with its iron straps and 3 locks, contained the entire payroll for General Burgoyne's Royal Army of the North. That money was Little John's responsibility. When another blow came, shaking the Swallow bow to stern, thoughts of war vanished. Little John understood. They had been caught, not by rebels, but by a terrible storm. With an agonizing groan of splintering oak, an overhead beam thudded down, missing Little John by inches. The next moment, water slid in beneath the door and lapped the far wall. But as the ship heaved again, the foaming water rushed away. Terrified, eyes wide with fright, shaved head glistening with sweat, Little John staggered up. Even as he did, the Swallow seemed to drop into a bottomless pit. The next moment, she hit a rock and shuddered convulsively. Again, the ship plunged. The iron chest leaped across the room and struck Little John in the legs, tossing him into the air like a 9-pin. He dropped heavily, hitting his head against a clothing box. Dizziness contorted his thoughts. The ship, swinging wildly, twisted them even more. "She struck," came a desperate cry. "She struck." Little John tried to see where the iron chest was. He must not lose it. As if drawn by his thoughts, the chest slid toward him. Little John held up a hand. The impact of the chest sent a wrenching pain up his arm. A banging on his cabin door. "Little John," came a shout. "Get me out," the quartermaster bellowed. "Get me out." Someone tried to get in, but the door, for security's sake, had been bolted from the inside. The waves struck harder. The winds intensified. The ship spun, lifted, dropped. "Boats away," came a new cry. "Boats away." Little John hurled himself at the door, clawing at the bolt which kept him in. The iron chest, like a prisoner determined to punish his keeper, flew at him again, pinning him against the door. But as the ship rolled, the chest fell away, careening against the farthest wall and cracking it. Water poured in. As the seawater rose, Little John managed to slide the lock out of its catch. But when the door burst open, a wall of water rolled in, pushing him back, almost drowning him. Abandon ship, abandon ship. It was terror that drove Little John now. Choking on swallowed water, he clawed his way back to the door. The iron chest filled the doorway and blocked his way. In panic, he threw himself forward. As he did, one of his hands struck the oil lamp. With a hiss, it plunged into the water and went out. In the roaring blackness, the ship struck another rock. By dawn, the sea was calm, its surface rocking with indifferent drift. Wood bits bobbed, shreds of sail intertwined with weeds. Stretching into the distance, a multitude of islands glowed hazy and green in the morning sun. A solitary figure, weak, broken, clothing in shreds, staggered from the water. Once on the beach, he flung himself down. Arms spread to either side, the man breathed deeply of land and life. Chapter 1. "Dad," Tony Sousa said, "what's money for if you can't spend it?" It was a Saturday, the first day of summer vacation. But to Tony, his vacation already felt like a disaster. Keep your money in the bank, his father said. He was unloading the dish rack. Dad, Tony pressed, if you had gotten up every morning at 6 for a year, delivering newspapers, got wet, got cold, fought off dogs, and made collections from people who didn't want to pay, you'd want to use the money you earned the way you wanted, wouldn't you? Tony, people are not allowed on roads with a motor vehicle until they are 15. A motor scooter is a motor vehicle. You are 11. Then what am I going to do with the $300 I made? I gave you a suggestion. Tony sat on the front steps. In 1 week, according to his parents' plan, he would go for a 21-day stay at his grandma's house on the Connecticut shore. When he had been younger, it was fun to learn to swim and to sit on a beach all day. And Grandma Sousa, though her English was sort of embarrassing, was all right. But now, Tony didn't know any kids where she lived, and he hated doing things alone. It would be a bore. Back from Connecticut, he would go with his parents on their annual camping trip with Uncle Umberto and his family. Tony grimaced. The only thing worse than being with no kids was being with babies. That would leave only 2 weeks before school began. Some vacation. Tony stuck his head inside the house. I'm going over to Jamal's, he shouted. When Tony slumped up Jamal's driveway, Rick, Jamal's older brother, was working on the red motorbike. Jamal was there too. They're going to let you buy it, Jamal called. Tony shook his head. Too bad, Rick said. This baby isn't going to last long. Got 2 calls this morning from my newspaper ad. Tony wandered back down to the street. Jamal ran after him. What are you going to do with that money? I'll think of something. What happens if your parents change their minds? They won't. Want to watch TV, Jamal suggested? Play ball? Should be some guys at the park. Tony hesitated. The thought of being with friends was tempting, but spending his money was urgent. Later, he said, shoving his hands in his pockets, he set off. First, he went to the bicycle shop, then a sports shop. After that, it was a toy store that carried computer games. Then there was the mart. As Tony wandered up and down the long aisles, everything seemed like junk. Then he saw it. It was a sailboat, no more than 12 feet in length, hanging from the ceiling. Made of some plastic-like stuff, its outside was blue and its inside was white. A wooden rudder was at the back. The mast was metal. The sail bore red letters which proclaimed the boat's name, Snark. A large price tag dangled from the hull. Sale, $295. The moment Tony saw the boat, he knew, sure as he knew anything, what he wanted. What he needed was a Snark. He ran home and poured out the news of his discovery, telling his parents all the ways the sailboat would make his summer exciting. When Tony saw them give each other a look, he knew it was not out of the question. He pressed harder, insisting they go to the store right away. At the mart, his mom gazed up at the boat and said, "It's like a polycystene cup with a sail." "Ma, it's a sailboat. Can I get it?" "There are some things to check first," his mom returned. "Come on, I have a friend who sails." "Mom," Tony wailed again. "Tony, it's not sailing anywhere." Once home, Tony's mom called her friend and asked for a reaction to a Snark. "You can't cross oceans with it," said the friend, "or handle bad weather. But in protected areas, it'll do fine. In fact, it's just about perfect for a kid who wants to learn to sail, and you can't beat the price." When Tony heard the report, he did a cartwheel in the dining room, narrowly missing a lamp. "Cool it," his father cautioned. "Your mom and I need some privacy to discuss this." Told to leave the room while they talked, Tony tried to listen through the door to what they were saying. He did hear his father make a call. Speak to someone, hang up. Then Tony was called back into the room. The answer, his mother said, is yes. If, his father put in quickly, cutting off Tony's cheer, if certain conditions are met. "I agree to everything," Tony said. "We called your grandma for her approval." And his parents exchanged looks. "She said yes," his father said. "All right," Tony called. "Second condition," his mom said hastily, "we'll pay, but you must have sailing lessons." "No problem." Finally, his father added, "You have to promise, really promise, that whenever you sail, you'll wear a life jacket." "Dad," Tony pleaded, "I just said I agree to everything." Monday morning, Tony and his mother went to the bank. withdrew his newspaper money, and headed for the mart. Heart thumping, Tony counted out 15 crisp, new $20 bills onto the counter. Plus $18 tax, the salesperson said. Tony's heart sank. He looked up at his mother. She looked at him. I'll clean the car, Tony said, and wax it 3 times. I would have paid anyway, she said with a laugh, but that's a deal. She also purchased a life jacket. Store people loaded the box with the snark atop the car. Once home, Tony spent the day, as he had promised, trying not to open the box. But by 8 o'clock that night, with his parents' help, the snark was assembled. She looked cool, if crowded in the middle of their living room, with her white and blue sail hoisted on the 7-foot mast. Wait a minute, Tony said. What's a snark? Look it up, his mom suggested. In the dictionary, he read, snark, a mysterious, imaginary animal. Snark.